Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Welcome back to our series on trying to forecast a 2025 price target for Tesla. So far, we've estimated what Tesla could reach by 2025 in terms of vehicle capacity and energy. Now we're going to cover FSD and Robotaxis. Okay, now we get into the most exciting part of the business, FSD and Robotaxis. So we need to first extrapolate how many Teslas might be on the road in 2025. So I've just done a quick table of roughly showing how many Teslas will be produced each year. Now bear in mind, we're ending up with 2025 at nearly 15 million, so I'm trying to make the model work as much as possible. And this is going to be on the bullish side. In 2022, we could see quite a jump due to Texas and Berlin being ramped up. Then 2023, we're going to see the advent of the Model 2. In 2024, Model 2 will be producing at scale, along with more growth anticipated from other locations. And then we eventually end up at over 14 million in 2025. Below that, we have the cumulative number of cars on the road, so we can work out how many cars will be available for FSD. However, this model shows the numbers as if all 14 million cars were sold on January the 1st in 2025. Obviously, all the cars sold in 2025 won't be available for Robotaxi inclusion, as they wouldn't have been built yet. For example, how can we take a full year's Robotaxi income in 2025 if some cars aren't even on the road until December 2025? So for our cumulative total, I only want to take 40% of the 2025 total for our potential Robotaxi fleet to average it out. Not 50% because I believe they're still going to be scaling up during the year. Coming in at 25 million Teslas on the road. Now in this scenario, we're not going to make any speculations as to what chance Robotaxis will be on the roads or whether they will have reached level 5 autonomy. If you don't think Tesla will be using Robotaxis yourself, then just leave it out of your model. What we're going to do is calculate how much Tesla could be making if Robotaxis are on the road. But in reality, you don't really need anyone to tell you their opinion on what chances Robotaxis will or will not be operational. Seeing is believing, and if you've seen any of their latest beta videos, then it's just mind-blowing what they're capable of. And that's now, and we're talking about 2025, with what would appear to be 20 to 30 times more Teslas on the road. Collecting that much more data, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. Tesla will likely achieve level 5 autonomy sometime next year. Then regulation will slowly open up at different stages in different countries. To start with, the US, or various states at least, might allow full autonomy just on highways, interstates or motorways, and as they feel more and more comfortable, they'll open it up to more roads, until eventually they'll be available in full cities. Tesla will then place a fleet of their own vehicles in a city to get the network up and running. Owners who have a Tesla that may be a few years old with 50 or 100,000 miles on the clock might feel compelled to earn some reasonable income from them. Word gets around, eventually supply meets demand at the right price point. The city requires less and less Tesla-owned buffer taxis, and they can be utilised in the next city, rinse and repeat. Tesla will need some of their own cars, in my opinion, to make sure the logistics are good to begin with. You can't be waiting 30 minutes for a Robotaxi. It needs to come in around the same time as an Uber, maybe 5 or 10 minutes is acceptable. But it might be a hard decision for the owners to initially let their cars out. They may possibly be able to view the internal camera, but that might be a bit invasive. I think the internal cameras should only be independently reviewed by Tesla themselves in the event of any damage. Bottom line is the bottom line. If the income is good enough, then I'm sure owners will let them out, and there'll be entrepreneurs who will buy fleets of 10 or 30 for this purpose. They won't care that they're brand new, but if someone just purchased a Tesla for themselves, the owner might find it hard to part from their new toy whilst it still has that new car smell. Anyway, I digress. Let's get down to some numbers. So actually, if you recall, we've not yet factored in FSD. Now, I think the cost of FSD should mainly be based on the amount of driving time saved on the average wage. In 2019, the US median wage was $19 an hour. Median is the most apt average to use, as it means half the population are on more and half are less. Average tax in the US was 24%, so essentially half of people's wages are worth about $15 an hour after tax. Now currently, only about half of Americans can afford a Tesla, but possibly when the Model 2 is for sale in the US and at $25,000, then much more than half the population can afford that. We'll assume that the price of FSD is the same for every model like it currently is, including the Model 2, and we'll assume that people are not willing to pay more than what they earn at work to drive themselves. The average American drives 8 hours a week. Therefore, at most, driving is worth somewhere under $120 a week. Given how many more consumers will eventually have a Model 2, and it's possible Model 2 owners have a lower average wage, Tesla doesn't want to cut them out of the market, so I think $200 a month is probably a good price for a Tesla driver. But equally, Tesla could decide to charge a per mile basis. However, $10,000 does sound like better value, but we're often told this price could go much higher. We even hear ridiculous figures like $100,000. But judging by people's value of time, I would say a lot of people in the lower wage bracket would be more willing to drive themselves to save money. So $100,000 is ridiculous, and a lot more expensive than $200 a month. I think the $100,000 figure likely factors in the value of robotaxis. Also, remember, there are countries where labour is cheap, and Tesla have to compete with chauffeurs. But Elon does tell us you want to lock in the price of FSD, and it will be better value to buy it once off rather than monthly. So I'm a bit conflicted here on how to add a price. Perhaps there'll be a different price for Model 2 FSD, or the pricing will work on a sliding scale, but we need to lock in some sort of price. So I'm going to assign an overall value of $15,000 for every Tesla that has FSD. Now we need to come up with a percentage of drivers that have FSD. Remember, this is for global sales. FSD may not have passed full regulation in every country by this stage, and it may not be popular in countries like China, perhaps. So I'm only going to place a 30% purchase rate, and that comes in at $66 billion of revenue. Now on to robotaxis. I've been trying to decide whether or not Tesla will require owners to purchase FSD in order to be allowed into robotaxi fleet. It's almost assumed that this would be the case, but on the other hand, wouldn't Tesla want as many robotaxis as possible? If you create a sizable barrier to entry like $15,000 or $20,000, then that will deter a lot of people who are possibly feeling dubious enough as it is in adding their Tesla into the taxi fleet. I don't believe we've heard any underlying assumptions that if you buy FSD, then you will be allowed to enter a robotaxi network. So I'm going to keep robotaxis and FSD mutually exclusive. Now, different models will have different costs and fares, and I think I would like to break it all down eventually on a per model basis. But for now, let's just go with averages. On Autonomy Day, Elon said the cost would be under 18 cents a mile. The gross profit would be 65 cents a mile with a 50% occupancy. So in other words, a gross profit of 65 cents every 2 miles, and a cost of 18 cents a mile means a cost of 36 cents every 2 miles, which means the turnover of a taxi would be $1.01 every 2 miles, as in the fare is $1 a mile, because of the 50% occupancy rate. Now, that was with the Model 3, and at this stage, there will be a reasonable number of Model 2s on the road, and perhaps owners are more willing to let their Model 2s out as a taxi, or entrepreneurs who've purchased large fleets of taxis. Anyway, let's average these numbers down, factoring in the Model 2. I think the Model 2 cost will be 30% less, i.e. around 12 cents a mile. I think 50% of taxis will be Model 2, and 50% Model 3 and Y. And sure, there may be some X's and S's in some cities, but I'll go into more detail on that when we expand the model in a later video. Let's keep it simple for now. Anyway, we're now at an average cost of 15 cents a mile, and perhaps an average fare of 90 cents a mile, assuming the Model 2 fare is 80 cents a mile. Just a quick side note, this is another reason I believe all these models will be using LFP batteries, as LFP batteries have a much higher life cycle, and they want to do as many miles as possible on a robotaxi. Okay, so we're going to estimate the cars are doing 90,000 miles a year, as that's what we were told on Battery Day. It was also confirmed by Elon Musk on the 2020 Q4 earnings call that they will be utilising 60 hours a week at 16 miles an hour, coming in at around 50,000 miles a year with occupants. Average that out for the year and it's around 90,000 miles, including downtime. Tesla say that they will take between 25 and 30% of the revenue. So let's factor in 27.5%, and I'm only going to go with 15% of Teslas being used the equivalent of full-time. So for example, if 2 Teslas were robotaxis part-time, that would essentially count as 1 taxi. If you think 15% is far too low, then by all means add in your own numbers. I've also added Tesla's own fleet of a further 1 million taxis. Okay, so let's plug in our numbers, and we come to an income of $60 billion. Sorry if it's not as high a number as you might have been expecting, but remember, this is still early days for Model 2, and FSD might not have hit regulation everywhere in the world yet. I believe that the following years, the robotaxi income will start to really rocket. I think rather than looking at the actual numbers here, it's more important that we have a proven proof of concept. And this robotaxi income, despite not being as high as you may have liked, is actually significantly more valuable than some of the other income. Okay, onto insurance. So I think there's 2 reasons Tesla are choosing to do insurance. The obvious reason is that they can sell insurance on a Tesla for so much less, as they know so much more about the car than any other insurance company. and realize that it is that much safer, and they can also repair the car cheaper than it would cost an insurance company. But when you actually do the numbers, insurance ends up not being a particularly big moneymaker in the scheme of things. So the main reason Tesla are offering insurance is that what other insurance company in their right mind would be willing to insure a robotaxi that drives around by itself picking up strangers? Okay, anyway, as it's not a big moneymaker, let's just do it quickly. I think it might be an average of $1,000 a year with 30% margin. The margin could be much higher by this stage though, due to FSD being that much safer and resulting in such fewer accidents. But if that's the case, then the price would likely be less too. Anyway, it comes in an extra $3.8 billion a year, but we can remodel that further later. Like I said, it's not a huge moneymaker, more a necessity for the robotaxi business. Okay, and that wraps up all our Tesla revenue streams. Stay tuned for how much this makes the company worth in 2025 for what's looking like quite a bullish price target. Thanks for listening, please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.